What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another session of Build, Break, and Fix brought to you by the Raw Coders. Yes, and you might be observing that one of the raw coder couldn't make it, so Kartik has been working, and which is why, due to his work commitments, he can't really make it today. We really miss you, Kartik, and hope to see you again on the next session. All right, so before we move on, I just want to do the acknowledgement of the country. So here goes.
I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today, and pay my respects to their elders past, present, and future. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today.
All right, perfect. So now that is all done. Let's recap what we did yesterday. So what we did was we were researching how to integrate Socket or WebSocket into our SAM API, uh, which is done in Express app. All right, because it is my first time working with this technology, we will have to keep on researching and learning, and then learn, build, break, and fix, if you know what I mean. All right. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, cool. So I'll just share my screen really quick and we could take it from there. Alright, just closing all the unnecessary tabs. Right, this is my screen, and this is that one. Let's share the entire content. Great. Okay, cool. So first of all, we need to learn how the WebSockets actually work. So difference, there is another technology called Socket Io. So I just want to check what's the difference between Socket Io and WebSocket. So let's do that first of all. WebSocket AWS and actually versus Socket IO. What is the difference between these? This seems to be a pretty good article. So the Amazon API gateway versus Socket IO comparison was correct, but okay, that's just saying what it does. So it's just comparing the different aspects of it. So time to hello world, which is that one. We don't really need that. But I just want a bit more detail to this. And I would also have to keep an eye on the comments in case we get some comments from our lovely viewers. All right. Okay. This was dashboard. No console. Ease of use. So what does he actually do? Much like console, much like the solution, the documentation is pretty lightweight. You have an excellent getting started guide that requires no prior Socket or node. There are tons of code snippets. Okay, it's just saying the features of it and how easy to get started. Socket Io does not provide a development console yet, which is fine. API structure. You can see, wow, this has that one. Okay, the Amazon API Gateway doc provides separate reference pages for each of the programming languages. The API are largely consistent. Oh, hey, Q Jesse, welcome. Good to have you. All right. So we want to integrate Socket I. How about if we do Socket IO with AWS SAM? It's possible to use Socket IO with Lambda. E- Right, that seems like a pretty good article. Uh, r- Recently, AWS released support for WebSocket services for IoT. It's very easy to use as a pub and sub message system for serverless. And function HTTP request and receive a WebSocket message on a client. I wrote a small package npm package that handles WebSocket connections to MQTT server from the front end app. Check out MQTT client. I don't think that Lambda is going to work for the case you described it. The link to the below. The Lambda function can only run for a maximum of 15 minutes. Right, and further, since you are charged per 100 milliseconds of the function runtime, this will probably be cost prohibitive. There's a comment on Amazon. Okay, so I guess we will have to do WebSockets because apparently we can't really use Socket IO with Lambda as Lambda is actually interacting with our database. Cool. So let's figure out WebSocket AWS. All right. WebSockets. Can I use WebSocket? Um. In API Gateway, you can create Web WebSocket API as a stateful frontend. For Lambda or DynamoDB or for an HTTP endpoint. The WebSocket API invokes your backend based on the content of the messages it receives from a client. Okay, right. So this is what we want. There are three predefined rules. Okay, so these are the basics of WebSocket APIs. Unlike a REST API which receives, let me check the comments. No, unlike the REST API which receives and responds to requests, Web API supports a two-way connection between client apps and your backend. Right, so this is a difference between the REST API and Web API. So REST API receives and responds to requests, but WebSocket supports two-way communication between clients, apps, and your backend. The backend can send callback messages to connected clients, right? In your WebSocket API, incoming JSON messages are directed to the backend integrations based on routes that you configure. Non-JSON okay. So incoming JSON messages are directed to the backend integration based on routes that we configure. Non-JSON messages are directed to a default route that you configure. Right, okay. A route includes a route key. Okay, I'll probably has to have an example for it, which is which is the value that is expected once a route selection expressed is evaluated, which is the value that is expected, okay, once the route selection is the route. Actually, I'm gonna go and um go to WebSocket Api in YouTube and check that. Build real-time, create WebSocket using API as a service. Yeah, probably this one I need. And how to create WebSocket use using API gateway and full tutorial. Okay, let's check this one out.
What's up guys, I'm Chirag and welcome to this video. And as always, I hope that you are finding the tutorials helpful. Right, so today I am here to start a new tutorial. Right, and I will try to keep the tutorials as simple as possible. So welcome to part 1 of the tutorial series on Amazon WebSocket API Gateway tutorial. Right, so interactive communication possible between the client and server. So here client can be the web browser, right? So WebSocket API is ideal for applications like chatbot, real-time dashboards, real-time alerts and notification system, collaborative platforms, or it can be multiplayer games, right? So we will start with the basic difference between REST API and WebSocket API, right? So how they works and how they create the connection, right? So at the very high level. So I have come up with this diagram at the very high level. So basically in REST API, the client initiates the request with HTTP methods like get, post, delete, right? And REST API will react accordingly based on the integration it have with that method, right? So basically, client sends the request, and based on the method or the HTTP method, the server will perform the action and send out some response back to the client, right? So that's how REST API works. It's kind of a request response model, right? So REST API is unidirectional in nature, and probably it is not suitable for real-time applications like chatbot and few of the application that I just mentioned earlier, right? So that's REST API. Whereas in WebSocket API, the client application connects to the WebSocket API by sending a WebSocket upgrade request, right? So client will send the HTTP upgrade request to the server, and in response, the server will send the acknowledgement packet. And if everything is successful, then the connection will be opened between client and server, right? And once the connection is opened, the bidirectional communication or the bidirectional exchange of messages can take place between client and server, right? So when I say it's bidirectional, which means two-way communication can happen, that is from client to server and vice versa is possible. Whereas in REST API, it is unidirectional in nature, right? So basically, WebSocket API uses single TCP connection for transfer of the messages between client and server, right? So, and finally, for closing the connection, any of the entity can close the connection. So it can be a client or it can be a server, right? So basically it can be a timeout or client close the connection, right? So that's how the closing of connection takes place in WebSocket API, right? So this is kind of the very basic difference between REST API and WebSocket API, right? So now we will move back to AWS Management Console and we will jump to the API gateway, because as I said, we are going to create the WebSocket API in this tutorial, right? So once you are within API gateway, click on create API from the top right corner. Now here we have three options. We are going to select WebSocket API. So click on build. Now give it a name. So I will say WebSocket tutorial. And then we have route selection
Let
expression.
me just confirm that if
So
I've got
basically the route
actually.
selection expression tells
Yeah.
API gateway which route to call when a WebSocket message is received.
Okay, so now that we know kind of a really basic definition and the difference between WebSocket API and the RESTful API, let's go ahead and try and create a WebSocket API in SAM template. So as infrastructure as code. All right. Um, hey Giza, what's happening, GagDev? Mm, good to have you. So the difference from what I've understood the video that I was watching on a really high level is the REST API is synchronous, so uh, it sends a request and then it receives the response, where as in one by one. However, in WebSocket, it's bi-directional, so once the handshake is made between the client and the server, the communications are from bi-directional. Hope my understanding was right. However, if you don't think, then I would love to, as in improve on that definition. Cool. So now let's actually, so WebSocket will be at the back end. So we have to open our backend backend repo. So let's go into that one. Am I already sharing my screen? Yes, I am. Brilliant. Okay, cool. So let's open our backend repo. And actually, yeah, I need to check how to create a WebSocket in SAM template. Create WebSocket in SAM template. Okay. Announcing WebSocket, yeah, that's fine. How to create a WebSocket using API gateway. You use same API gateway for both WebSocket and HTTP Lambdas. Yeah, I think that would be my scenario. Okay, one possible solution is to put behind a CloudFront distribution. I'll do this probably since I'm already using. No, that's not. This is relevant section for my. Okay. I've been using AWS for WebSocket API that's working well. Today I needed to add an HTTP. Okay, cool. So we already have this, but we need this, right? So this is how it's done basically. And apparently, WebSocket API use this for various WebSocket Lambda works like a charm. Interesting. So WebSocket API, just have to keep on the comments as well. Right. Uh, do, 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 do. We go. Okay, so we have our API gateway, which is over here. Now we need to create our WebSocket API. Alright, so let's do this. So WebSocket API would be okay. WebSocket ping lambda. Okay, hello function. Yeah, cool. So this would come over here. So WebSocket API. That it. No, this is it. Okay, and then I'm gonna do a type API gateway. Why does he have a version 2 here? Interesting. Type API AWS API gateway. I'll just copy and actually no, I don't want to copy and paste anything. API gateway v2 API. Okay, and properties, that would be properties name simple relay WebSocket. So properties name simple relay, no, simple my I just call a scrambler WebSocket. Okay, and protocol type WebSocket in caps, type WebSocket. Okay, and then root selection expression, root selection expression default. So what would be the okay, so let's actually have a look if this actually works for us. Alright, so I'll just do some build. Anyone miss us in the chat? No until now. Okay, so it's still building, which is good, and it's built successfully. That seems positive. So now we do a SAM guided deployment and use our profile scrambler. Alright, there we go. Yeah, that's my stack. I'm happy with that. Yes, save arguments to configuration file. Yes, yes. Brilliant. Okay, so it's just initiating the deployment, and now it will deploy the chainsaw. See if we are messed up anywhere. If we have, it won't upload it won't deploy the change successfully. Okay, so it's creating the WebSocket API now. This is great. Interesting. So it's actually created it. Brilliant. Okay, so let's go to our Lambda. Do, 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 do. Here we go, and our IM user is no account ID. What was the account ID? Ouch, I do not know. Actually, let's access that from the root user first. Okay, and I'm gonna just stop my screen sharing because I need to get the password. 83CHWH. Okay, let's stop my screen share to get the password. There we go, and let's get that one. Where's my password? I need my password. My password is over here. There we go. I found my password. And if we enter the password in the root account, there I got my thing. Now I need to go to IM users and actually go to my users and then get the account ID from there. Now that should be very good to go. Yep, found it. There we go. That's my account ID. No, I don't want the entire bit. Just want. Oh, oh well. It's giving me the entire bit. That's interesting. I don't really want the entire bit. Or I can just copy it from here. Cool. Okay, so sign out and create. Go into that one. Brilliant. Okay, here we go. We are in. So now I'll come back and share my screen. Where's my screen gone? Yeah, here we go. There we go. We are back in action. So what we needed to do was check if it's created our WebSocket. Hopefully he has. Cloud formation. And this is our stack. Events. That is fine. Okay, that's element function permission prod. Scrum API, Scrum API deployment. API gateway deployment is REST API. Here we go. This is our WebSocket API, which is brilliant. Cool. So let's open that and check what it says. Okay, so it's got free connect rookie. Okay, I need to learn the terminology as well. Cool. So now that this is done, what we need to do is we need to we need to learn its terminology. Okay. Cool. So go back in the video.
By mapping the value
I've done
So
that.
I know it sounds confusing, but it will get clear maybe in the part 2 of this tutorial series, right? So here we are going to mention $request.body.message, or it can be $request.body.action, or any key you want to mention, right? So it's going to be $request.body.message, or you want to keep it as action, then you can keep it as action, or anything you want, and then you can add a description if you want. And once you're done with that, click on create API, right? And here we have successfully created the WebSocket API, right? So here in the left panel, we are on the routes. So here we have route selection expression that we have defined while creating the WebSocket.
Okay, what exactly is the root selection expression? I need to have a look at that. So the root selection expression tells API gateway which route to call when a WebSocket message is received by mapping the value found at the evaluated expression to the root key. Wow. So the root selection expression tells API gateway which route to call. So in our terms, it would be the route get, propose, and delete probably when a WebSocket message is received by mapping the value found at the evaluated expression into the root key. Okay. I still don't get it, but let's focus and it might explain us later in the video.
Right? And then we have these routes, that is connect, disconnect, or default. So for example, client is trying to connect to the WebSocket API, then connect route will be called, and then when client is trying to disconnect, or client is disconnected from the WebSocket API, then disconnect route will call, and any other request that might come goes to default, and we can add another route keys over here, right? So at this point of time, all the routes are disabled. We have to click on it to add the route, but we are not going to do that now. I will take you through routes in the next tutorial, right? So basically at the very high level, route selection expression right now is request.body.action, right? So basically this expression tells API gateway how to determine which route or which action to perform, right? And now, for example, we have another key saying message, right? So, so now if I go ahead and pass action colon message, then it will evaluate the expression and it will determine that message route should be called, right? So that's how route selection expression will work. But we will come to that in the next tutorial. Called, right? So that's evaluate the expression and it will determine that message route should be called, right? So that's how route selection expression will work. But we will come to message,
I didn't
then
get it.
it will evaluate the expression and it will determine that message route should be called, right? So that's how route selection expression will work. But we will come to that in the next tutorial, right? So now moving along, then we have stages. So these are going to be our deployment state. So it can be development, it can be dev, prod, or testing, or whatever stage as per the requirement we want to create or deploy, right? And then we have authorizers. So we can create a new authorizer that is based on the Lambda function, right? So that's authorizers. Then we have models. So basically models represent the data structure of a method request or response payload, right? So you can click on create and define the model schema, right? And then we have dashboard. So here you can get some insights regarding message count, connection count, and whatnot, right? So right now we don't have anything over here because we have just And then we have this endpoint type as regional and the API key. So that's so this is a very high level about WebSocket API, right? So I know routes might sound a little confusing at this point of time, but the idea will get clear in the next tutorial, right? Because the next tutorial is going to be about routes, right? So this is all I wanted to cover in this tutorial, right? So as I said, in the next tutorial, we will create routes and I will take you through. What's up guys, I'm Chirag and welcome to part 2 of the tutorial series on Amazon WebSocket API Gateway tutorial. In the previous tutorial, we had created the WebSocket API as you can see on my screen. And now in this tutorial, we will configure routes. So first we will try to understand what exactly routes is, and then probably we will move on to the configuration and the backend integration with the respective routes that we have on the screen, right? So I am within the API gateway that I have created in the previous tutorial, right? And I am within routes. Now here we have three options that comes by default. That is connect, disconnect, and default route. So right now they are disabled, right? To add those routes, we have to click on it, and then it will give us the option to integrate the backend. So the backend integration can be a Lambda function or the HTTP endpoint or any Amazon service, or it can be a mock integration, right? Apart from that, we have $request.body.action. So this is the route selection expression that we have configured in the previous tutorial, right? So here we are going to start with the assumption that we have configured all these three routes, that is connect, disconnect, and default, and all these three routes are integrated with the Lambda function as a part of the backend integration, right? So having said that, and with that assumption, we will move on to this diagram, right? So as I said, we have connect, default, and disconnect route as configured, right? So basically what will happen is API gateway will call the connect route when the persistent connection between the client and WebSocket API is being initiated, right? So at the very first time, when the connection is being persistent between client and server, the connect route will get executed, right? And once the connection is open, we will have the functionality for bidirectional messages, right? So once it is opened and the connect route is executed, we will have this option, right? So that comes as a part of the route selection expression, right? And regarding disconnect route, API gateway calls the disconnect route when the client or the server disconnects from the API, right? So API gateway will try to execute the disconnect route when there is a termination of connection either from the client side or the server side, right? So it can be a timeout or manually terminating the connection from the client side, right? So at that point of time, disconnect route will get executed. Now, having said that, we have opened the connection and we are here, right? So now here we have route selection expression, right? Just to give you an idea, so let me change this. It's action over here, right? So now we have route selection expression as request.body.action, right? And now the client will send the JSON payload, right? That is action colon message. So this is the key value pair. Now once the payload is sent, what route selection expression will do is it will evaluate that payload. So here this action represent this key within the payload, right? So it will try to look for the action as a key within that payload. If it is there, then it will grab the value of that key. So basically in our case right now it's message. Now once route selection expression will have that value as a message, it will look for the possible routes with the exact match, right? So here we don't have any other routes except the default one. So what it will do is it will forward or it will pass on that request to the default route because it is unable to find the message route. Now for example, we have another route saying, now for example, so here we don't have any other routes of that payload. So here this action represent this key within the payload, right? So it will try to look for the action as a key within that payload. If it is there, then it will grab the value of that key. So basically, in our case right now, it's message. Now, once route selection expression will have that value as a message, it will look for the possible routes with the exact match, right? So here we don't have any other routes except the default one. So what it will do is it will forward or it will pass on that request to the default route because it is unable to find the message route. Now, for example, we have another route saying message over here, right? Now, in this case, what will happen? Client will send the payload that is action message. It will look for action within that payload, so it have as a key. And once it identify the key, it will grab the value of that, and it will look for the possible route. So now we have message as a route, so it will pass on this request to this route, right? And this route will have its backend integration. So let's assume it also have the Lambda function as a backend integration, right? Now, for example, if I'm passing the payload as service, right? So now, in this case, what will happen is it will first evaluate this JSON. It will look for the action as a key, and it's unable to find it. So what it will do is it will by default pass on this request or payload to the default route, right? Because it is unable to find the action. Now, same goes for if I say action help, right? So I'm just trying to give you an example. So now the payload is action as a help. Now route selection expression will evaluate this payload. It will look for action within that payload. And once it is successful, it will grab the value of that key that is help in this case. Now it will look for the possible routes and it will try to match help with the possible routes, right? So here we have message and default, right? So what it will do is it is unable to find the help route, so it will by default pass on this request to the default route. Now, in case if we go ahead and create the default route, sorry, not default, help route, then instead of passing or forwarding this request to the default route, it will pass on this request to the help route, and it will have some backend integration. Let's assume it has Lambda function, right? So this is how it will evaluate the payload, right? So for example, client can pass non-JSON messages. So instead of this JSON message, client can pass non-JSON messages, right? So maybe I can say something like this, text payload, for example, right? So basically, non-JSON messages are directed to the default route that you configure, right? So because here it's unable to find any key value pair, right? So that's how route selection expression will treat the non-JSON payload, right? Or the non-JSON messages. So let's change this once again. Else action. An expression will are directed to the default route that you configure, right? So because here it's unable to find any key value pair, right? So that's how route selection expression will treat the non-JSON payload, right? Or the non-JSON messages. So let's change this once again. Else action message, right? So at high level, what will happen is the service will use this route selection expression to identify the keys which exactly matches with the route. If the key does not match the route, or if that route doesn't exist, then it will by default forward that request or the forward that message to the default route, right? And for example, if no routes match the evaluated value and we even don't have the default route, right? So we don't even have this default route, then what it will do is the service will return the error, right? So it's a good idea to always have the default route to pass on or to send the response to the client saying that it's invalid message or whatever, right? But the high level, that's how this route selection.
Oh, looks like there's some comments. Gag devs asking why are you doing WebSockets? So the reason we're doing WebSockets is because we want as in multiple users to be able to interact with the board, which means that the communication has to be bi-directional, if that makes sense. So they would probably be able to interact with the board simultaneously. Alexander Cook, Vask.tech. Welcome, Alexander Cook. Good to have you. I'm not entirely sure what you said there, so you might want to elaborate if you want to. So let's go back to the YouTube video.
An expression or the roots work, right? So here I have mentioned a few points. So connection is open. So once the connection is persistent, the connect route will get triggered. Once the connect route is triggered, we will have the bidirectional messages
Mm-hmm.
feature, right? So we can send a message from client to server and server to client and vice versa, right? And then once the connection is closed, the disconnect route will get triggered. Now let's go back to API gateway. So here we are going to configure connect and disconnect route, and we will not configure default route. We will come to that at later point of time, right? In some other tutorial. So now we will require two Lambda function and the IAM role. So we will start with the IAM role. So navigate to IAM management console. Once you are there, click on roles from the left panel and say create role. Select Lambda as a service because we are creating.
Just bear with me, guys. I need to get some water to get that in my gullet, so I'll be right back. Alright, back into action.
This role for the Lambda function and then click on next permission. Here we will attach AWS
Any comments so far? Nope, we don't have any comments. Cool. Let's jump back in the code.
Lambda execute permission, right? So by default it will have S3 access and the cloud function,
So
Lambda
where's
function and the IAM role. So now we will require two Lambda function and the IAM role. So we will start with the IAM role. So navigate to IAM management console. Once you are there, click on roles from the left panel and say create role. Select Lambda as a service because we are creating this role for the Lambda function and then click on next permission. Here we will attach AWS Lambda execute permission, right? So by default it will have S3 access and the CloudWatch access. Then click on next tags, add a tag if you want, then finally click on review and give it a role name. So I will say WebSocket underscore Lambda underscore role. Okay, it already exists. Maybe I will say WebSocket underscore Lambda, right? And click on create role. Now, once the IAM role is created, navigate to Lambda Management Console. So here we are going to create two Lambda function, one for the connect route and one for the disconnect route, right? So once you are within Lambda Management Console, click on Create Function from the right top corner. Give it a function.
Right, okay, so now what I need to do is I need to create the lambdas for the connect and the disconnect as well. Cool. So hello, we can create that over here. So connect connect to WebSocket function. Okay, and this would be type server. Actually, what was it? Yeah, type serverless. Type is that is my serverless function. Yeah. And what do I need to interact? Right. This is what would be a bit tricky. Properties. Properties. To be honest, I don't even know what the properties should be. Code URI. Okay, my code. So the code will be in Scrambler API. So that folder would be right. Code URI. Scrambler. But that needs a space. API. So it's in that folder, and which one would it be handling?
We'll say WebSocket Connect, right? And I will select runtime as Python 3.8. Within permission, use existing role. Select the role that we have just created, that is WebSocket underscore Lambda, and say create function. Now go back to Lambda Management Console again.
Actually, let's do it this way. So create a lambda function to connect a client to WebSocket server. Right, there we go. We've got some videos how to build a real WebSocket. Yeah, that could be alright. Build a WebSocket service. Why serverless? Okay, don't need that one. WebSocket clients, if you get it right. Adding lambda role, which is fine. Adding custom config. No, not this one. This is serverless.yaml. I need SAM to build a real-time using API gateway. Yeah, this one should be good for us. WebSocket concepts, default use vendor. Okay, that one is fine. Don't really need to know that. Device connected via WebSocket. Right. So yeah, I need this. I need to check how to create this lambda. Connect, disconnect, and messages. Get connection ID from that. Right. Create WebSocket API. Yeah, that's fine. No problem. Create before adding the rule according to the above, we need to do create connect lambda. Okay, so we need to create all these lambdas. Right, so first let's create DynamoDB table and go to right up basically it's done. Okay, no, we need to basically create another table. Okay, right. Um, in which we will save all the connection bits. Alright, I didn't know that. Cool. Let's okay, so connection another DB. We need to create the table. We need to create another one. So let's call this connection. What did he call that? Chat connection users. Actually, would I need that? Yes, I would need another table for users to determine which users are actually connected to the WebSocket, and then we need to, whenever the board has been changed, all those users which have the connection ID and they are still connected, they would get the updated updates. Yeah, I need that. So users to DB. Let's do that. Type yes Dynamo DB table. Okay, properties key schema. So the attribute name would be connection ID. Connection ID, and that would be basically a string. Yeah. And I would need another one saying attribute name equals to that would be basically status user connection user connection connections connection um the WebSocket connection. Okay, connection ID and attribute would be status to determine if someone is still in a connection or not. As anyone commented, uh, yeah. Hey Tori, good to have you, mate. Welcome. Yes, I am. So I managed to following this really useful tutorial on YouTube, which is this one, and is basically learning as in what's the difference between the RESTful API and WebSocket API, and also I managed to create a WebSocket API, and now I'm basically um following this tutorial and in the process of getting all the prerequisites done, which is apparently I need DynamoDB and these three Lambda functions. So I'm just trying to create another DynamoDB in our SAM template. Yeah, yeah, it's fun stuff, mate. Definitely fun stuff. And wow, the time really flew. Right, looks like we can leave it at this point. Uh, okay, yeah, you watched another video which was very helpful. Yeah, I think there are loads of videos which are really helpful and as many resources on the internet. Yeah, can't wait to get this working because it's at the moment it's kind of a steep learning curve for me because I haven't worked with WebSockets before at all. So yeah, but yeah, guys, thank you for tuning in. Been a pleasure having you guys. And yeah, what will you do with DynamoDB? So apparently, I need a way to figure out as in as in what which users or devices will be connected to this uh, to the board, and for that one I need to store all the connection uh, IDs in the database and with the status of active or non-active. So when I see that a user has kind of dis disconnected, he won't get the message that others have sent. Yeah, yeah, connection ID. Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Right, cool guys. Have a great evening or wherever you are in the world, morning, afternoon, or good night. And we'll see you back here tomorrow with same place, same time, and the same task. Yes, you guessed it. Alright, guys. Cheers. Bye.